The reading is taken from John chapter 14, verses 15 to 26. Jesus promises the Holy Spirit. If you love me, keep my commands, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to help you and be with you forever, the Spirit of truth. The world cannot accept him because it neither sees him nor knows him. But you know him, for he lives with you and will be in you. I will not leave you as orphans, I will come to you. Before long, the world will not see me anymore, but you will see me. Because I live, you will also live. On that day you will realize that I am in my Father, and you are in me, and I am in you. Whoever has my commands and keeps them is the one who loves me. The one who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I too will love them and show myself to them. Then Judas, not Judas Iscariot, said, "But Lord, why do you intend to show yourself to us and not to the world?" Jesus replied, "Anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and he will come to them and make our home with them. Anyone who does not love me will not obey my teaching. These words you hear are not my own. They belong to the Father who sent me. All this I have spoken while still with you. But the Advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will remind you of everything I have said to you."
Acts chapter 1 verses 4 to 8 and chapter 2 verses 1 to 21. Once, when Jesus was eating with them, he commanded them, "Do not leave Jerusalem until the Father sends you the gift he promised, as I told you before. John baptized with water, but in just a few days you will be baptized with the Holy Spirit." So when the apostles were with Jesus, they kept asking him, "Lord, has the time come for you to free Israel and restore our kingdom?" He replied, "The Father alone has the authority to set those dates and times, and they are not for you to know. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses, telling people about me everywhere, in Jerusalem, throughout Judea, in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." When the day of Pentecost came, they were all together in one place. Suddenly, a sound like the blowing of a violent wind came from heaven and filled the whole house where they were sitting. They saw what seemed to be tongues of fire that separated and came to rest on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit enabled them. Now there were staying in Jerusalem God-fearing Jews from every nation under heaven. When they heard this sound, a crowd came together in bewilderment, because each one heard them speaking in his own language. Utterly amazed, they asked, "Are not all these men who are speaking Galileans? Then how is it that each of us hears them in his own native language? Parthians, Medes and Elamites, residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and the parts of Libya near Cyrene, visitors from Rome, both Jews and converts to Judaism, Cretans and Arabs. We hear them declaring the wonders of God in our own tongues. Amazed and perplexed, they asked one another, "What does this mean?" Some, however, made fun of them and said, "They've had too much wine." Then Peter stood up with the 11, raised his voice and addressed the crowd. "Fellow Jews, and all of you who live in Jerusalem, let me explain this to you. Listen carefully to what I say. These men are not drunk, as you suppose. It's only 9 in the morning. No, this is what was spoken by the prophet Joel. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days, and they will prophesy. I will show wonders in the heaven above and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and glorious day of the Lord. And everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved."
I didn't know what he was talking about. A few days before he was crucified, Jesus started telling us about what he called the Counselor, the Spirit of Truth, the Holy Spirit. But he seemed to be talking in riddles. He told us that the world doesn't know the Holy Spirit, but we know him because he lives with us and will be in us, and he will be in his Father and we'll be in him and he'll be in us. It was all very confusing. And my mind was spinning as I tried to understand what Jesus was talking about. But two things stuck in my mind. One was that although he was leaving us, he wouldn't leave us by ourselves. When he went, it would be as if he was always with us. The other thing that stuck in my mind was that he said that if we loved him, we would obey his commands. To be honest, I was a bit hurt that he even felt he had to say that. I thought, of course we loved him. Of course we would always do whatever he told us to do. But I didn't realise at the time how difficult it was going to be to obey his commands over the coming weeks. When Jesus was with us, everything had seemed possible. But when Jesus was taken away from us, we didn't know what to do anymore. We just stayed inside and didn't dare to do anything that would attract attention. Then, a few days later, Jesus was back from the dead. Jesus spoke to us again about the Holy Spirit. He looked at us in the way that he did when he had something important to say and told us to stay in Jerusalem and wait to be baptized with the Holy Spirit. He told us we would receive power. We all nodded very seriously, but we still didn't really know what he was talking about. And Jesus was taken up into heaven, and we were back on our own again, scared, confused, and useless. We remembered what Jesus had told us about those two things. The first was simple enough: stay in Jerusalem. Even we could do that. But Jesus had also told us to be his witnesses in Jerusalem and to the ends of the earth. This seemed completely impossible. How could we possibly be his witnesses to the ends of the earth? We'd struggle to be even his witnesses to the end of the street. Jesus had said that if we loved him, we would obey his commands. We did love him. We really did. But we were finding it so difficult to obey him. We felt so useless. We really felt as if we'd let him down. Even his command to stay in Jerusalem wasn't as simple as it seemed. I mean, how will we know when we've been baptised by the Holy Spirit? What if we missed it and just waited in Jerusalem forever? Well, as it turns out, we really needn't have worried. When it happened, we certainly knew about it. On the morning of the festival of Pentecost, we were all together as usual, when suddenly there was this almighty roaring sound, like a strong wind. The sound grew louder and louder until it just filled the whole house. Then we saw what looked like flames which came to rest on each one of us. We knew straight away that this was it. This was what Jesus had told us to wait for. This was baptism with the Holy Spirit. And what an incredible difference it made. We didn't want to hide anymore. Now we just wanted to go outside and shout out loud. We wanted to go outside and tell everybody about Jesus. So that's what we did. We even started speaking in languages we didn't know, and we were understood by everybody in the crowd. Now, I've never been one for making speeches or saying clever stuff, but what I said that morning was fantastic. But I can't take any credit because it wasn't me speaking. The words may have been coming out of my mouth, but the words weren't mine. Listening to those words coming out of my mouth, it reminded me of what Jesus used to say. It was as if Jesus himself was speaking from inside me. And then I remember what Jesus had said. Jesus had told us that he would come to us and would live inside us when we receive the Holy Spirit. It was just so wonderful to think that Jesus was speaking through me. It had seemed impossible for us to do what Jesus had commanded us to do. But once we received the power of the Holy Spirit, nothing was impossible anymore. I didn't know what he was talking about, but I do now.